What's up, Lords? Once again, you're on with the Black Comic Lords in the building with another one of our Black Comic Creator Interview series. Now, look, we've been doing a lot of these. I've been doing a lot of these too, specifically. I'm an old hat at it, but I have to tell you, there are times when the person I'm interviewing, I am so awed and fanboydom that you get a little nervous. You get a little jittery. So if I seem a little off kilter, it's because I'm interviewing, and I don't think this is an exaggeration when I say this, one of the hottest writers in comics today. He's got two of the hottest books on the shelves today. And his history is a dope one of the books that he has written. I'm not going to waste a lot of time on intros. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bryan Edward Hill.
Yo, how'd
I'm
be
supposed
here?
to have some type of theme music or cheer.
Well, I was freestyling a little bit to like the intro music. It had some bars for that. I was like, okay.
We'll have to work on that for the next time.
Next time I come on here, I'll come on here with some bars.
Appreciate you joining us.
Happy to be here.
All right. So look, you tell me, how'd you get into comics? Let me start with that, because I always like to ask that question. Because
do you mean like as a reader of comics, or do you mean as a creator of comics? Because it's two different kind of things.
Both. Let's start with reading. How did you start? How did you get into comic books?
Well, I mean, when I was coming up, they were a little cheaper, right? So, comics were like the thing you got. You went to a 7-Eleven, you got a Slurpee, you got like a Snickers bar, like a hot dog, and then you got some comics. And that was kind of impulse buys.
Right.
And I was really into action comics, Superman, Captain America, and Batman.
Right.
Those are like my ride or die books. And then I got like really into them when I started to rock with the miniseries, like the Arkham Asylums, the graphic novel stuff, the Dark Knight Returns, Year One, all that, because they started getting a little bit more literary. And as I was getting older and getting interested in deeper kinds of fiction, the work was getting a little more layered, so I could kind of grow up with it. And just really, that's all I wanted to do when I was a kid. I just was going to, just be a comic book writer, I guess. But I couldn't really figure out how one would do that. And to be real, there weren't that many comic book writers that looked like me, right? So like I didn't really know like what the gateway was into the game, But I liked movies, and so I went to film school, and then was deep into filmmaking, and that was like going to be the focus. I went to NYU. And then I was going to stay in New York, and I was going to be like an independent filmmaker.
Right.
And I still tried. I mean, I couldn't get arrested by the big two. I had a Marvel editor I met with years ago when I lived in New York who told me that like I would never work in comics. I was just trash, and I just wouldn't work there. I had someone tell me that about screenwriting too, that I was trash, and I would just never, But I'm really stubborn, and people always tell you can't do a thing, and then you do it. And then you elevate to something else. They tell you you can't do that. Then you do it. So now I'm focusing on writing and directing my own scripts basically. And a bunch of people don't think I can do it, and I'm gonna do it.
Right.
That's just life. That's like whatever. I don't care. But then I got into the filmmaking thing, and then when I started selling screenplays, that was when the comic book world would mess with me a little bit.
Right.
Because I had like some Hollywood on my shoulders.
Well, can you tell me it's like some of the screenplays that you've done that people wouldn't know?
Well, I mean, those things I've sold, people wouldn't know. Like I've sold a ton, but I haven't gotten a ton of them made because that's not really up to me. That's like how the cards all line up. But when you were known in the business for having sold a script to like Universal, to a sci-fi thing over there, like that, that just gives you a little bit more cachet.
Yeah,
because everybody likes that Hollywood money. And to his credit, there's a guy, Matt Hawkins, who ran Top Gun. Still kind of runs it, but Matt was the first person to ever really give me a job. And Ron Mars, the writer was supportive of me and got me like a short story in something.
Right.
And I remember, like, that meant so much because it was my writing that, like, I could go to a store and I could find my short story in the store. And that was cool. You know, I hadn't had that experience before, just like being able to go into a store and see my work there, you know.
Right.
And from that short story, I did like a mini series for Top Cow, and I just kept doing things, and I landed on Postal. And then once I landed on Postal, then you're doing a monthly book, and we did about 24 issues. So
Top Cow, that was Cyberforce. Was it Cyberforce?
no, Postal was before Cyberforce, because Postal
Okay.
the crime story in the town with the whatever, right?
Right.
So didn't have a huge readership, but it sold okay. But I got to work on the same story for 24 issues. You know, which is a lot of, you get reviews, you're out there, you know, it's a whole thing, and you become a little bit more of a mainstay. And then once you've been on the scene for 2 or 3 years doing things, then the big two sniff around you a little bit, and you wind up doing, you know, a little bit of thing here in a DC book, little thing here in the Marvel book, you know, what have you. Screenwriting thing was kind of going at the same time, landed on Titans, and then worked on Titans, that television show, for 5 years, right? So it all kind of came together. But it's a lot of my career is about, you know, I do one thing over here, and then I take the energy off of that, and then try to get something going in this different format. You know, and then I take the energy off of that, then try to get it going in this different format, and then I come back to the first thing. And so a Hollywood career is like, imagine playing pinball. You never want the ball to just go between the paddles.
Yeah.
So you just want to keep working on something. And, you know, you have your score you're trying to rack, and you're trying to get, you know, you have your goals, but just don't let the ball rest. Like, always be working on a thing.
But look, you've been working. Just to give people an idea of just the span of genres and companies and types of books that he's done. I'm just scrolling through, and this is from League of Comic Geeks. I know you've got upcoming Alien, Black, White, and Blood. American Carnage was a big series that you got a lot of notoriety on. But you've worked on everything from Angel, Batman and Outsiders was an incredible run. And
Well,
we'll
thank
talk
you.
about
I'm just going to be real. I still don't feel like I am part of comic book culture.
Oh,
like I don't
really. We talked about this backstage. You don't. You need to get out more.
I dead up do not. You know, and I'm not coming at anybody in particular, but people in comics were like not cool to me when I first showed up. Yeah, like no one wanted to sit with me at the lunch table. So I never felt like I was in the flow of it. I always felt like I was, you know, kind of getting in where I could fit in, and I do a little thing here, do a little thing there. But I've never really felt welcomed by the pro culture in comics. Fans, yeah. Like readers for sure, right? But like the pros of comics, you know? So like
I'm so shocked to hear that.
It's weird when you're like scrolling through the stuff, because I see all the stuff that I've done, but I don't live in that place, you know? So I still feel like the cool kids do not mess with me, right? But I really enjoy the work that I do, and I love talking to readers, and I have fun doing it. So, you know, I'm not really feeling a way about it. It's just funny to think about myself in that context. I certainly don't feel like that.
Yeah, Mighty Mr. J sounds like professional jealousy to me.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you know, I don't know. I just think maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something about me and my personality, the kind of the way I move, that, you know, I don't really rock with, I guess, the culture of a lot of comic pros. Well, I got a couple good homies, like, you know, Ben Percy's a good friend of mine. Yeah. You know, Tom King's been really supportive. So, you know, I've definitely got some good heads out there. But like, I don't go to Comic-Con because I don't feel particularly welcome.
Wow. That blows my mind.
So I just kind of stay at the crib, you know, and I do podcasts and talk to my homies and talk to people on social media.
All right. I sent you on Instagram.
Yes.
A upcoming con coming up in August. Atlantic Comic-Con.
Yes.
Okay. I would strongly encourage and ask that you try to go to that con.
I am going to try to go to that for sure.
I promise you, sir, you will feel very welcome with the other creators who are there who would be very happy to see you.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna try to make it. I can't absolutely confirm because I'm gonna be shooting something, but if I'm not on set, then I will definitely make it out. I should know in a couple weeks or so.
Please do. The Black Comic Lords will be there. I think we're moderating some panels.
Cool.
That'd
be great.
And I, on behalf of Atlantic Comic Con, we'd love to have you.
Yeah.
All right. So, you mentioned that you did Titans, but
yes.
Why we brought you on tonight? What was this title of this show? All started with a particular tweet. Here's the tweet from FJS111.
That's a tweet.
Bryan Edward Hill, any chance you can convince Marvel to let you write a team-up series with these two? So that is the question of the hour.
Yeah,
because you have the two hottest books on comics, which we're gonna get into that in a second. But Ultimate Black Panther and Blade,
sure,
blowing up the shelves.
Some people seem to be like really feeling it. Like I'm not really tracking performance because I generally don't do that because it just gets in my head and I don't need to worry about the numbers. But it seems like people are really enjoying it, and I appreciate that. It's super cool. I'm always I'm super humbled by the idea that anybody goes into a comic book store and takes their time and money and spends it on something that I wrote. Like, I don't take any of that for granted. I don't know, maybe you get to a point in your life where you start taking that for granted, but I don't take it for granted. So it blows my mind when people I don't know are texting me on social media because they had an experience with something I wrote. Right. And I appreciate that so much because, like, the idea that somebody spends their hard-earned money, and comics aren't cheap. Like, when I was growing up, they were cheap.
Yeah.
You had 50 cent, $1.50, $1.25, whatever it is, you'd be good. These things are rocking at like $5.99 sometimes, right. They're not inexpensive, like, books, right? So the idea that somebody would spend their hard-earned money on something that I wrote, like, I never take that for granted. So I appreciate each and everybody that spends the time with my work.
I don't know much about comic numbers, but I do with Black Comic Lords also being in social media stuff. I listen to the comic streets.
Oh, and
in the comic streets, your name is out there, man. It's popular. You're popular. Your writing's popular. Your books are popular. And I'm not just talking about just recently. Like, we've been talking about you in our space for a minute.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. I appreciate that.
Whether it be, as I said, Batman and the Outsiders, your Black Panther Unconquered, Fallen Angels. Your name's been out there for a minute.
I appreciate that. I'm always working on something, and usually, like, I'm trying to put things together, and I'm pretty ambitious, right? So, like, like right now, I have a horror film that I'm getting together. It's a horror feature that I want to direct. That I'm really intense about. So I don't have a ton of time to really check into how the feedback is going beyond what I get, like, coming and going on social media. Maybe I'll see a review because they'll tag me or something. I might read one or something just to kind of get a sense of how things are being received. But there's only so many hours in a day, and between living and working, I don't have a ton of time to kind of understand, who's getting interested in the stuff I'm doing and how they're affected by it. And I don't often go to conventions. And like you say, maybe I should change that, but I don't really go, so I don't do many signings. Yeah. So I don't get a lot of in-person interactions with fans the way I'd like to. So yeah, it's nice to hear that people are having a positive experience with it, because I remember, when I used to just go in to buy books before I was a creative, professional and telling stories for a living. And, I remember the connection that I had with books, and books meant a lot to me because they found me at particular times in my life where I could share them with people I cared about. And it created, unique memories for myself, and also created shared memories with other people.
Shout out to Jay. He's
to be a part of that. Shout out, Jay. Thank you for the tweet. And to be part of that is just an amazing thing. So anyway, so my response to this
Here you go.
tweet.
Here you go, Jay. Here's your response.
My response to this tweet was, you have to let Mr. Marvel know you want it. You know, like I can't make him want it. But would I do it? Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be a lot of fun. You know, I think it'd be interesting to put those two characters in a narrative together. And
so let me
yeah.
clarify what that means in a pragmatic sense for each of you who are watching this and are looking at this tweet and going, damn, that would be so hot to have these two in their own series or a crossover or something. First, this is Black Comic Lord, so what am I going to say next? You got to pre-order your books. If you love these characters, pre-order Ultimate Black Panther. Don't just buy it off the shelf, show up on Wednesday. Pre-order your comics.
Unfortunately, true. Like the business model is built on pre-orders because of just the way that store owners are generally small businesses, so they have to be very careful about what they're going to spend their money on to put on the shelf, and so they gauge interest based on the amount of pre-orders they get. So the more pre-orders they get, the more of those books they're going to have in stock, and then the more opportunities people are going to have to find those books. Especially, you know, when you're dealing with not something, you know, you're not dealing with Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman or something like that, right? So
pre-order your
Spider-Man,
books,
you know.
Get subscriptions at your local LCS, and then finally outreach. Everyone's got social media now. Tag Marvel on posts about how much you love the book. Every book at Marvel has a letters page that you can email. Email them, say it's ready, fit to print, or whatever the phrase is. Let them know how much you love his writing and how much you love to see this book come up. That's how you get it to happen.
Yeah, like they do respond to fan interest or, reader interest, the conversations that are happening. That shows people shows them as a company that there are people out there that are interested in exploring, such and such writer's take on such and such character, or, a combination of these characters in something. Those things definitely do matter. But
I'll even say, I'll take it one step further. Those of you who are watching right now, particularly if you're on social media, share this video, tag Marvel, and say, Marvel, we want Blade Black Panther right now with Bryan Edward Hill writing it. Go ahead and send that out. Share that right now.
I'm telling you want it.
That's how you want it.
All right. Creatively, I absolutely would pair those characters up into a narrative. I think that'd be a lot of fun, especially since I've spent so much time on each of them, kind of developing my own way into them. Although, it would be a different Black Panther, because it would be within the 616 where Blade...
Which goes to my next question, Mr. Bryan Hill.
Yes.
My next question. Well, two questions. One, is or is not Ultimate Black Panther an ongoing series?
Oh, I believe it is, yes.
It is an ongoing series. So
it's an ongoing series.
What that means for all of you out there is he will continue to write this book. He'll continue to be afforded the opportunity to write this book for as long as you buy the book, but specifically you pre-order the book. So please, let's do that. So that's cool to know. And if you were afforded the opportunity, because I hear there's a vacancy right now, to write the 616 version of Black Panther, would you want to do that again?
Interesting.
On his ongoing series.
It's an interesting question.
Volume 11.
I would deeply consider it, as long as I had the runway to do high concept action adventure storytelling centering T'Challa.
Do you get along well with Will Moss?
I do. He's great.
Hit him up. Ask him.
Well, it's great. I think it would be a little weird, though, for Marvel to have me writing him both. I think that might just be a little strange for them. But yeah, I would consider doing it. I mean, my response to both Ultimate Black Panther and Blade, when they were brought my way, was always, well, I want to do high concept genre storytelling with these characters. I'm not lambasting anybody's work or their focus, but I didn't want to do kind of like navel gazy stuff. I didn't want to get mired in the sociological conversations of the day.
Right.
I wanted to do high concept, character driven genre storytelling. And
for me, that sounds like code for I want to do some really dope comics.
I mean, that's what I go to, right? Because I think about like people spend, again, their time and their money on this stuff.
Right.
And most people have jobs they don't like, you know, working for people that don't respect them as much as they should.
Thornton gave you a shout out.
What's up, Jeff? How you doing? Jeff's a pal. He's a homie. So yeah, most people, you know, like you spend your time with your books and you want to go to a place, you know, and you want to get transported into a story world where you feel like the writer and the artist are working in concert and they're going to do something broad and interesting with the character, right? So that was my response to both the opportunity for Blade and Black Panther. Ultimate Black Panther was, if I can approach it in this way, yes. You know, so that's where my mind is right now. Is, you know, sometimes I get into the mood where I want to do deep, more interior psychological exploration, deconstruction, I guess.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's been so much deconstruction. And maybe this is a bit of a reaction to having worked on Titan since the beginning of that show. So I was on that whole show, right? 5 years of that for me.
Right.
4 seasons of the show, I think, but 5 years is what it took to get the 4 seasons done. That's longer than people go to college.
Yeah.
Right. That's a quite a bit. It's quite a chunk of your career, 5 years, right? And I think that show, while it was interesting to me. Oh, what's up, Joe?
Joe giving you some high praise.
Mr. Illage in the house. Wisdom has arrived.
Remember I said about the creators do love you.
I mean, I'm not saying, I don't think I'm not like, you know, like Cybok the Vulcan who can't like go back home to his planet. Like it's just that I never felt that I was deeply in rhythm with everybody. But you know, sometimes I am interested in that psychological exploration. But I think from having done Titans for 5 years, a show that was aiming at deconstructing all of these archetypes, at walking away from Campbellian structures, from you know, kind of turning the mythology of things upside down in a lot of ways. I feel like constructionist storytelling is almost the new punk rock.
Right.
Right. Because everything is deconstructed, it seems. And I'm not criticizing anyone's approach, but you know, it's like Luke Skywalker ain't really Luke Skywalker anymore. He grumpy. And then, you know, it's just, the Matrix don't like the Matrix, but it's still the Matrix. You know what I mean? Like everything is deconstructing itself. That experience of like going to watch RoboCop that I had as a kid, you know, like those experiences of like watching Highlander when I was a kid, where people just felt really excited about telling you this awesome story that wasn't ashamed of being a genre story, that wasn't trying to avoid the connotations and denotations of genre. They were just deeply invested into it, and you went in that ride. That feels rare now. And so that's the energy I'm living in, you know, right now.
You make me want to scream hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus Lord. I mean,
well, culture shifts, right? Culture shifts. And I think when especially in Western society, when we feel really comfortable in Western society, now we want to tear everything apart.
Right.
Right. You know, like think about Fight Club. Fight Club is a movie where like the problem is they shop at IKEA. Right. Like that's what the problem is. Like the thesis of Fight Club is I have a good job. I have stability. I don't have to worry about my needs. I have healthcare. I shop at IKEA, and I need to punch people in the face so I can feel alive. That seems ludicrous now in a world post-pandemic, you know, where we have sociological conflicts, political conflicts, geopolitical conflicts, everything that's going on, right? And so in like the Clinton 90s, we wanted to deconstruct everything. You know, it was all about, well, we're going to tear down the sacred things, and you know, whether you look at the rise of stuff in hip hop or you're looking at like alt rock or whatever it was. But now we're in a time where the world is unstable. And some of the basic precepts that we grew up with, you know, whether you're old or young, that you grew up with, aren't guaranteed anymore.
Right.
Democracy isn't guaranteed, right? Maybe it never was, but now we're kind of aware of the fact that, like, oh, it might go away. You know, economically, where are we, right? You know, social mobility, suburban angst. You know, a manifesto is talking about exactly,
You
right?
deconstruct so much down to the foundation, then you realize, crap, I've got a mess around me and I've got to build it back up again.
Well, and so myth in the, you know, consciousness of the human animal, right?
Yeah.
Myth, science isn't guaranteed anymore. Night Watch. Myth was how we tried to organize the chaos because the human mind wants order, right? I mean, imagine the first people that experienced fall and winter. You thought the world was dying.
Right.
And it was getting cold, your crops were dying, and then the snows came, and you didn't know if the sun was ever going to come, right? And you needed stories to help organize that, right?
Well, you're
You know,
touching upon something that we talk about. Please continue.
well, it's just real, right? Like, you know, if you're scared of the dark, you huddle around the campfire and you tell stories about what may be in the dark, but also things that can battle what's in the dark, so the dark doesn't scare you as much.
And that's where I think a lot of particularly older readers like myself who've been reading comics since they were 4, you know, now we're our midlife, you know, and we have this pushback against so much deconstruction of these heroes because comics, particularly superhero comics, to be specific, there are modern myths, there are modern fables,
Sure.
right? There are Beowulfs, there are you know, the Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the modern version of these fables that we've had. And when you are in a world that you're struggling, you're in a 9 to 5, you got stresses, and you just want to pull out a comic book, and you just want to let all the stresses of your life go away, but just absorb into a story, and it's a deconstruction story. It's like that's not bringing order to chaos. As you said, it's adding more chaos to something that was like your safety,
Well,
your old shoe or your safety blanket.
It is a worthy exercise, and it can yield worthy art.
It can.
The deconstruction of things and the exploration of things. I just think that right now we want to believe in Superman. We don't want to be scared of his temper.
Right.
Right. Like right now, we need a Batman that doesn't kill. Because we need to see a person with that firewall against crossing that line and struggling with those ethics.
Mm-hmm.
I often say that I don't write stories that are especially political, but I do write stories that are very ethical. And for me, if we're discussing ethics, the political stuff is sort of gets folded in there without me having to preach to anybody.
Right.
Right. Because if you discuss politics, people turtle up. I don't believe that. Or I like somebody different than you. Right. If you discuss ethics, more people engage.
Right. There's no labels on it.
Right. And so heroes are the avatars of ethics.
Yeah.
Where do we ethically sit? Right. What is ethical action and its consequences? So I think that we're running a little thin on those kinds of stories.
Yeah.
And it always kind of goes in cycles. And I think the pendulum has swung so far over to, now we're going to deconstruct all of this, and we're going to, verisimilitude to the point of kind of picking apart everything until there's nothing left but the bones. And then it sort of swings over this way. Right.
So I want to take this and apply it to some of the books that we're talking about right now. Specifically, let's go to this next. You're writing. Let's start with Blade.
Yeah.
I love Blade as a character. Like many people, I really started to love him after the Wesley Snipes movie came out in 98.
Oh, sure.
I think that was a big point for all of the people who are a lot of people who are into Blade right now.
Mm-hmm.
Cody Ziegler wrote a really cool He's writing Spider-Man, Miles Morales.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw this issue or not, but Blade meets Miles Morales. Blade and Bloodline, his daughter, meet Miles Morales.
Sure.
And Cody did something that I thought was really cool. When we're talking about deconstructionist versus constructionist, he gave Blade stuff that I haven't really seen before. Mm-hmm. He has Blade in this particular panel produce this mystical artifact. And he's like, yeah, normally we just think Blade, we just think a guy with the swords and he's got the throwing knives and he just kills vampires.
Sure.
And this Blade is a little bit more contemplative. He's like, I'm not going to go in, swords blazing. We're going to use this artifact to, fight the big bad. Mm-hmm. And then he does another thing. He uses magic. He uses his magical incantation to change Miles Morales' costume and give him a vampire fighting outfit, what have you.
Sure.
And I'm like, those are things that make sense that I hadn't thought of before. I mean, Blade is probably a couple 100 years old, right? At this point. And you would think someone who fights things that go bump in the night might have picked up a couple tricks here and there, right?
Sure.
And he's not just fighting vampires. I love, like, in your opening statement on every Blade issue, it says, he fights the evil supernatural, right? It's not just Blade, the vampire killer. It's Blade, warrior against evil supernatural, because that gives you so much, such a bigger template to play with, right? And it allows him to expand and construct the character to beyond a simple two-dimensional he fights vampires guy.
Right.
So I wanted to know if you were aware of this before you did your run, and then B, I wanted to get into some of the stuff that you've done.
No, I wasn't aware of it, but I think that it stands to reason, right? So, to your point, Blade shares, I don't mean in terms of the personality characterization, but I mean in terms of the opportunistic characterization. He shares a lot with your Connor McLeods and Duncan McLeods, right? With that's Highlander reference for people who don't know what Highlander is, right? But
if
he
you
shares.
Don't know that reference. Ashamed of you.
That's a beautiful. It's the movie. The first movie definitely has like an '80s kitsch to it, but beautiful score by Queen, and Michael Kamen. It's wonderful, and if you can get past how powerfully '80s it is. And I'm a fan of the 80s, so I love that kind of stuff. But if you can get past how powerfully 80s the aesthetic is, it's just a really, really fun movie to watch. But point of it is, got characters who've been around a long time,
right?
Who've seen things, right? They've been through a lot of things. So that should definitely show up in the character as they're interacting with people in terms of what they know and what they're comfortable with. One of the things that I wanted to do in my Blade series was teach him to be, write him in a way where, he was going to know people we've never met before, and he's going to have done a bunch of things we've never seen because he's been around for a long time. I saw that Queen reference from that person who sent the thing in. So
Pericles.
Pericles Dragon Ball.
Here we are,
born to be kings. We're the princes of the universe. Yeah, it's great. So I was like, well, it'd be like James Bond. Like, we don't question when James Bond goes to like Turkey and he meets someone there. They're like, oh, Mr. Bond, been quite a long time. And Bond's like, well, I get around every now and again. And then they sit down, right?
Right. It's like, I haven't seen you since Paraguay. Yes, that was some nasty stuff we did.
I haven't seen you since Paraguay. You look good. Seems you've been keeping up with your shit-ups. So we don't question that because he's Bond. So of course he knows some cool dude and they had a background and maybe the dude's going to try to kill him later, but then he won't, And I'm like, Blade is like that. Like, he's just around. And then you have cool characters like Satana and, I love the spooky side of the Marvel universe because all the characters are just kind of badass, and they're not like, caring about what the Green Goblin is doing. You know what I mean? Like Satana is like, oh, she's not gonna sit there and have a detailed conversation about Norman Osborn. You know,
to that point, one character I'd love to see you pull into the series.
Wait, just to answer your person's question there. I think Sean Connery is probably the most impactful Bond in terms of creating the essential, like, kind of presentation qualities of the character in filmed media. My personal favorite Bond is Timothy Dalton.
Really?
Because Dalton, to me, is the closest to the Bond of the Fleming novels.
Not Daniel Craig?
Craig is definitely influenced by that, right?
Yeah.
Like I always say, Timothy Dalton walked so that Daniel Craig could run.
Okay.
Right? Because Dalton approached Bond as a real character in terms of looking at the novels and wanting to manifest a man who was kind of dangerous.
Right.
And Dalton's Bond was a guy that you kind of wanted him to do the job, but you didn't necessarily want to be his buddy. And I like Brosnan, but I felt like Brosnan was sort of this beautiful combination of Connery, Lazenby, Moore,
right,
but didn't really have a lot of Dalton in his game. You know, there's moments in like The World Is Not Enough where like a bite comes out of Pierce, but I just think the way his movies were constructed, he never really got a chance to evoke those qualities because the 90s was sort of genre hyperbole, and they weren't really into emotional verisimilitude and emotional consequence. Yeah. Didn't get a lot of emotional consequence in the 90s. The World Is Not Enough has more of that because I believe that's the one with Sophie Marceau. And that one's interesting because Michael Apted co-directed that a bit with the action guy. So like you got a drama director who did the dramatic scenes and an action guy, the second unit guy. It might have been Alexander Witt. Don't quote me on that because I've met Alexander Witt and I don't want to put him in the mix in the wrong way. But and that was kind of cool. But so Craig is kind of, he's able to do his work because Dalton did his work. But I think there's a boyishness in Craig in Casino Royale that isn't really present in even the Casino Royale novel to me. And then I think Craig sort of became his own creature.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to grow and change and evolve so that his movies were part of an ongoing character arc of the character.
Yeah.
I think Dalton was more of like, you can watch License to Kill and The Living Daylights in any order you want, and it doesn't change the story, right?
Right.
Roger was super cool, and Roger Moore was like super charming, you know. Bond, James Bond, yes. I'm James St. John Smythe, yes. Well, sir, you know, the Fabergé egg.
I've always preferred the more dangerous aspects of because, you know, in the novels, you know, he's portrayed as, he's described as this blunt instrument, and we forget the man's an assassin. He's a British assassin for all intents and purposes. And so I love to see that more dangerous side of him.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, as a kid, he was more accessible because he was the nicest of them.
Yeah.
You know, as a little kid, I didn't understand half of what the Sean Connery movies were about because girls had cooties. So I didn't really get it. You know, but he's just like, oh, sure, I'll push a galore, you see. What? I don't understand what you're talking about. I don't get it. So Moore was something I could identify with, right? Because Moore was kind of like Grandpa Bond. Yeah. You know, he was like, you know, like the nice Bond. You know, you felt like he would be cool. You'd hang out with him, and he'd be like, well, young man, I need to see a villain about a thing. You should be careful. Now hide behind that door, right? You'd be like, he's like that kind of Bond. But yes. So.
Only Roger Moore could have done Live and Let Die.
Live and Let Die is kind of dope.
It is.
Because you can tell
that's a low-key blaxploitation flick.
Oh, it's high-key blaxploitation flick. Names is for tombstones, baby. Like, that's an actual line in that movie. That's Yaphet Kotto in full Yaphet Kotto mode, right?
Absolutely.
Like, no, I mean, Live and Let Die is, that movie is lit. Like, they were on one on that movie.
Yeah.
Right? And I kind of love it because Moore just sort of realizes as an actor, like, this is very interesting. I'm standing in Harlem with a bunch of cool black people, so I will try to be among them. You know, and it's like, what? Like, what? Like he looks so uncomfortable, but like kind of down with it. Like it's amazing. That movie's amazing. Jane Seymour is gorgeous in that movie. I think she's like 19 years old. Solitaire. I think she's like 19 years old or something. And I mean Paul McCartney and Wings, you know, like live and let die.
It's probably
like,
honestly one of the top 5 Bond songs of all time.
I mean, yeah. It's like, and you got that sort of like thinly veiled implied racist sheriff that's in that movie, you know? Like, I mean, that movie's on one.
Yeah.
Like,
I live in Florida, so I really got that sheriff.
Okay. I mean, this has been your live and let die minute.
Yeah.
So,
all right, let me
I think that starts off with like Bond in his kitchen, like making coffee or something. He's like in a bathroom, and like M shows up to his house, and he like hides a girl in his closet, and then he's like, "There's no lady in my closet, M. I'm just making some coffee, sir. Would you like some coffee, sir?" And it's just like, what is going on? I mean, yes, but like, wow, y'all, wow, live and let die, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, so let me get back to your book. Let me get.
Sorry, you brought up James Bond. I got fired up. I have opinions.
So you do this Blade series. You have him fight not a vampire because that's been done. You create this big bad, which is far badder than any vampire.
Sure.
So much so, even Stephen Strange is like, you let that person loose? Are you insane?
No, Stephen has opinions too about things.
Yeah, well, he's I mean, if we're really counting resumes, I'm like, Steven, you've let out this. I mean, you want to compare big bads you let out?
Yeah, Steven, he likes to keep your receipts, but don't look into his.
Right. You're like, you being
he that friend.
I almost wanted Blade to say something like, "You've been a bit hypocritical, aren't you, Steven?" Like,
come on, man.
Do you want me to pull out the receipts?
Come on, man.
Yeah. Anyway, so I love that fact. I love that fact that you didn't do the trope of him just fighting the next big vampire bad. It's something much bigger than that. I mean, he's literally got to go to hell for this. But
what I wanted to do with that conceptually is take the opportunity. Richard Wright in the house. That's cool. I didn't think Richard Wright was still with us, but that's awesome. Love Native Son.
This is Richard Wright's Air in Spirit.
Oh, well, I'm glad that you're here, and I'm happy to talk to you about Blade. That's a good book, Native Son. Everybody should go out there and read it. So I wanted to create the opportunity with this story to let more big bads into the Marvel universe. Right.
Which I appreciate.
And bring in more Byzantine style evil, right? Like, the Adana is sort of a creature out of Clive Barker.
Yeah.
Something out of that more Byzantine Hieronymus Bosch sort of, almost Enochian supernatural exploration. And then I wanted to kind of personify evil as function too, like entropy as universal function, as necessity. But in saying that, well, now this thing has been loosed, so there will be more terrible things coming.
So what do you do to fight the terrible things? You have Blade team up with the terrible thing.
Yes, I mean it's evil against evil. Right. And I'm a huge fan. I love it. It's very good. I love Dracula.
No,
I love vampires.
You did not.
I love vampires. They're always my favorite. Always my favorite, the vampire. I never liked the werewolves, but the vampires were always my favorite.
They were huge.
They were huge. They were always better. Vampires are always. I'll tell you who's a vampire. I love Bram Stoker's Dracula. I thought it was like super cool when I was a kid. Like again, like those Baroque aspects, right? The classic aspects, like the mist and the wolf and the thing. And like when he turns into the bat when they come in and they got the cross, and then like the bat comes out, it's like, look what your God has done to me. And I'm like, that is awesome. He's a giant bat that's also talking. What?
I really
he's
want
the
you to
hero
just.
of this.
I love the fact that you're letting yourself go wild and just doing strange stuff, out the box stuff in this run. I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean, so it's like, okay, Dracula's awesome.
you
And
have
and I love the
Blade.
powers and the thing and the history. And so I'm like, well, why don't we have Blade's a vampire? And it's like, bro, you're fighting your kung fu with like one arm behind your back. Time to stop
Right.
that.
So you level up, my man.
Right. He's got to level up and explore his darkness.
And
Because
how do
if
you
something
level?
is
How do you
total
level up
darkness,
a Daywalker?
well, you
Drink Dracula's
drink
blood.
drink Dracula's blood, right? Like, you know, the blood is the life. You know,
He's like, I'm not drinking your blood, dude. So you need to drink my blood.
he's like, dude, really? Like, really?
You really
Like,
have to say that.
You bothered me, homie. I was fine. And you came in here, you drink the blood. Can he? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he
You
can.
just got your ass kicked. I mean, you can
Yes,
continue to do
he
that.
can change into mist.
All right. So yeah, and then he's got these powers now. He's changing into mist.
He can change
He's
into
turning
a
into a
wolf.
wolf. You know what has to happen next. What's the next power he's got to have?
What's the next power?
You already said it. He's got to turn into a bat.
Oh yeah. No, I'll explore that.
It's got to happen.
Because that's his legacy, right? Like he should have those cool powers, you know? Like,
yes.
You know, if you were playing, I know there's a Blade video game, but like if I was designing a Blade video game and I had a skill tree, I would definitely want cool things to happen when you pressed like, you know, both triggers. You know, I want you to be able to like press both bumpers and something cool happens, and then you press the Y button and the YB button, and he should have like cool like Dante Devil May Cry combos he does, where it's like slash 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 mist, fly behind you, turn to a wolf, knock you up in the air, turn to a dude, slash 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 slash, boom. You know, like Blade should be on that. Like if I was making the Blade movie, that's what Blade would be on.
Right.
You'd be getting like Capcom style Devil May Cry combos out of Blade.
Well, you said the magic words, and someone asked a question about that, making the Blade movie. Like,
yeah,
your run is literally a Blade movie. I mean, we're talking about this Mahershala Ali. This movie is cursed. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I'm not going to make any rumors, what have you, but whatever's happening, the movie seems to be cursed with director changes, cast changes, story changes. The time release time keeps getting pushed out. Has anyone reached out to you about, hey, you got a run that's doing really well. The people seem to dig it. Maybe we should have a guy who's actually a screenwriter and a comic book writer give us some tips as to how we can make this better. Has anyone approached you yet?
No one's approached me, but I mean, Michael Green is doing the screenplay, last I heard, and he's really, really good. I mean, Michael did Blade Runner 2049 with Hampton Fancher. Yeah. And you know, those Agatha Christie movies recently Michael did. He was the showrunner of Kings, I think, on NBC a while back.
I loved Kings. Kings was
good. No, so he's a really, really skilled writer. I don't think it's a problem with creative ability. I think it's very difficult to do this wide-ranging universal stuff and know what you want your movie to be, right? And you know, you've got some mitigating ideas too, right? Like mitigating factors now. Like I think this Deadpool movie is rated R.
Mm-hmm.
And if that really works, do you make Blade rated R?
That would be logical.
Do you not, you know, so like there's so much there, right? So I don't think it's a lack of talent. It's not a lack of creativity. It's just these stories aren't happening in a vacuum anymore, which is really, really interesting in one sense, but it also makes it incredibly challenging in another sense. You know, and then Disney and vampire hunting aren't necessarily, you know, that's not the chocolate and peanut butter of entertainment, right? So I just think it's navigation, honestly. Now, if they came to me, would I want to do it? I don't know. It would
Please,
depend on
please,
what
please, please, please say yes.
it would depend on what they wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
It would because if you're not, you never walk into these things with just sand.
But Bryan, you don't have to do anything. You've already done it.
Well, but they may not want to do that, and they may
Well,
not
then
want to
they're
do something
silly. Then they
that
don't
is
deserve to
totally
do the
that,
movie.
right? They may not want to. They may not want to do something totally that. They may want to do something different. They might want it to have more of a comedic tone, a lighter tone. I don't know anything,
Yeah.
but so when people ask me about it, well, it's like, well, it depends on what direction they wanted to go in. Um, like I love Batman, for instance, but I probably wouldn't be the guy to do, Snyder's vision of Batman.
Right.
Not that I have I have no animus towards it. I think he's a really hard working, guy who has a vision for what he wants to do. I just am not the best person to execute Batman in that way. I would likely work better with Matt Reeves.
Yeah.
I would likely work better with Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
So it all depends on because ultimately these are the studio's toys.
Right.
And they need to do what they think is best to do for everything they want to do. Not just let me make a hyper badass movie, that takes you on a ride for 110 minutes. For 110 minutes. So, yeah. But yeah.
You have
But Blade's action should be like Devil May Cry. There should be combos and cool effects, and I want like a single take of Blade, like going up, fighting the thing, and then turning
he's
down.
He's got to have a power move where he swings around with his sword and just slices up, and there's lots of blood everywhere.
I mean, we have the technology to like do it. So I want to see some S rank action sequences. I want S ranks at the end. If Mahershala Ali were to walk off the movie, who would I cast to replace him with Blade? That is a very good question. I almost don't want to entertain it in case Mahershala watches this, and I don't want to tell him who I'd replace him with. Because Mahershala is a really strong actor. Gosh, it's a very, very good question. If I had to do it, maybe John David Washington.
Yeah.
If I had to do it. So in this hypothetical world where I'm directing John David Washington as Blade,
I think Delon Noel could do it too.
Could. I would have John David put on maybe 10, 15 pounds of muscle onto his frame just to get a little thicker for Blade. But I really liked his work in Tenet. I thought he found in a movie that is very dense in a lot of ways, and kind of creates a barrier when you're watching it. I thought performance-wise, he made that interesting in ways that I didn't expect. But yeah.
Does Blade end at issue 10? Is what am I understanding?
This series ends at issue 10, but I can't really say things.
You can't say,
but I might be doing more Blade after the Blood Hunt. But I don't know, maybe, possibly, I don't know.
But maybe.
I don't know, maybe.
You can either confirm nor deny.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
But what you
can't confirm or deny. Yes. What would you like me to confirm?
What you can confirm is that you're working on this.
Yep.
Blood Hunt.
I am doing a Midnight Suns story.
You're doing the Midnight Suns story on this big crossover event.
Big crossover.
Now, given that the central figure in this is he's prominently featured, so I'm assuming he's the central figure is Blade. He's going to have a huge role in it. He's got his own specific Blood Hunt Blade story, which I think is written by, is it Cheryl Eaton?
Oh, I'm not sure who's writing it. I know Jed's doing the main thing.
Yeah. Is your story in Midnight Suns going to tie in any way to your Blade story? you're currently doing?
Sure.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not going to be something where you need to have read that to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because I'm working with different characters and all of that. But will it tie in? Yeah, absolutely.
This seems like it's going to be a huge event. Do they give you like details, like how big this is going to be?
It's going to be the biggest.
I walked into that.
The biggest Marvel event you've ever seen. You've never seen something as big as the Blood Hunt. The Blood Hunt is going to be bloody, and they're going to hunt, and you have to go out there and just pick it up, just pre-order it, because they won't let you read it. They don't want you to read it, but if you pre-order it, you can read it. So.
I walked into that. I deserve that. All right. So
when you're writing, are you voicing the characters out loud to make sure that it sounds right? Yes, Mark, I do. I generally perform, because you can tell I'm a complete fool. So I oftentimes like act out a scene or something, just to make sure it works. Like I've been doing a screenplay. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll hire actors to just do a table read, and then I can just hear my script, just to make sure that it's all working. But in the comic book, I won't do a table read because the way comic books are written is kind of weird for an actor to do it. But I definitely will like kind of act it out. I even thumbnail, kind of do layouts on my own comic book scripts. I can't draw. Like I'm terrible. I'm a terrible illustrator. But what I'll do is I will illustrate it. I won't like do finishes, but I'll do enough to like lay it out with really rough, characters and all of that. Just to make sure that it's like an illustratable page.
I always wonder about your process because
super big, huge, the bloodiest, the biggest. Bigger than you've ever seen. You've never seen something as big as the Blood Hunt. The Blood Hunt is the biggest and bloodiest hunt you've ever seen. You've never seen it like this. It is really a shame that more comics are not as Blood Hunt as Blood Hunt. It's truly a shame. Horrible what's going on in that country.
You're not going to let me get through this. Oh, God. I completely forgot.
I told you I was really foolish. I'm like super foolish.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say your process. That's what I was going to ask. Your process.
So, he's like, I got to get this back on rails. Like, I don't even know what's going on anymore.
Your process. One thing I noticed about several of your comics is the very cinematic style that it has.
Sure.
And I was wondering if is it a matter of selecting a particular artist to work with you, or do you give them directions on like angles and stuff?
No,
because
I don't.
It looks very cinematic.
So one of the rules in screenwriting is you kind of want to get more done with less, right? Screenwriting is the art of using less words to evoke mental pictures inside of the reader. Because you don't want to direct the movie for the director. You want to evoke images in the director's mind so that the director figures out how they want to approach it. And so even though I'm a filmmaker, I don't write like the way I would do it. And I think maybe because I am a filmmaker, I have an understanding of how much I need to put down and how much I can let go. So in a comic, I like to work with people who have a very kind of graphic quality of their style innately. Like Elena Casagrande, it just looks cool. Like her stuff just looks cool, right?
Her art is phenomenal.
So when I'm working with someone like that, I'm not dictatorial about where the camera goes and all that. I mean, sometimes I'll do like, medium shot, medium long shot, I'll edit a little bit, but that's really just to give them a sense of how I was seeing the shot construction in my head.
Right.
Because it's not just every individual image, it's also the language of how every image speaks to another image. So you've got the individual images that speak to the reader, and then you have the language of images in sequence that also speak to the reader. Those are two different things. So I do employ some like cinematic technique in terms of maybe things I'll focus on in a panel, but I'm very vague about composition. Mm-hmm. I'm not telling people where to put the camera, for lack of a better term. I'm not telling someone what to foreshorten, what to highlight. what's in the different planes of action. I let people figure all that out. But the one thing I do, I suppose, in my style is I am pacing the reader through these images. So it's more of an editorial thing
Right.
than anything else in terms of editing the rhythm of how the story goes.
Now you seem to have a really good affinity for the supernatural, mystical.
I do.
And one character I'd love to see you incorporate if you do some more of this stuff in the Marvel universe is Dr. Voodoo. I think
Oh yeah,
having him and Blade, or him show up in the Midnight Suns or something like that, would be awesome, because he's not being used right now. And I know Marvel's really starting to lean more into their
yeah.
occult side.
Well,
And
I
now's a
like the
great time for
character.
them.
I like the idea of the character a lot. And look, I feel very much at home in the spooky side of the Marvel universe,
Right.
because no one knows that horror has always been my favorite genre. But when I came into writing, there just weren't opportunities to do horror out there.
Mm.
And to be honest, a lot of people, they feel a way about it, especially on the film side of things. A lot of people, it's funny, every studio has a horror division, but none of them are like super proud of it. Right. And I don't know what that's about. It's just like there are certain sectors of at least Hollywood that will benefit from the fiscal opportunities that you get when you make a horror project, but don't necessarily like making it their brand, making it the first thought you think of. I'm like a horror bozo. Like, I love horror. I love suspense. I love stories that deal with, the kind of darker things, the imagination and beyond. So a character like, Dr. Voodoo would be really interesting. Like, doing things like that would be really interesting. Like, one of my favorite things that I've done in comics was when I was working on that kind of Warren Ellis Funhouse mirror version of the Justice League, whatever. And I got to play with Constantine a little bit in that paradigm.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. Angel was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah.
Because, Angel, there's a lot of Batman and Angel, and there's a lot of Constantine and Spike.
Yeah,
I mean, like Whedon ain't really hiding his influences in that.
Right. If you look at the opening credits of Angel, you clearly see a lot of Batman references.
Well, if you want to get deep on the Buffyverse, let me tell you something about the Buffyverse. So here's my theory. Here's my theory. If you've seen A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, I think like 90% of the Buffyverse comes out of that movie. Because there's a boyfriend in that movie who wears all black and a black trench coat, has spiky hair, and does like martial arts. And it seems just like Angel, and he sort of looks like David Boreanaz a little bit. And then Alice, the protagonist of A Nightmare on Elm Street, when things happen to some of her friends, she gains these powers. And The Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, ends with a woman who's kind of like dressed like Buffy, like doing kung fu against Freddy in a church. Okay, I literally think that the bulk of what the Buffyverse became comes from A Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
Now I gotta check the credits on that movie.
Look at anyone watching this. Look at A Nightmare on Elm Street 4. I mean, I'm in total like Tarantino bozo mode right now, right? Like, okay, let me tell you something. All right. I'm gonna tell you. Okay, so here's the thing. So A Nightmare on Elm Street 4. Okay, so you gotta watch that and think about Buffy, because he was watching that when he was thinking about Buffy. Okay, so like seriously, like you gotta like watch A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, think about Buffy, and it's like all in there.
I may never look at Buffy the same again.
You won't, because there's a dude who's basically Angel, and then the hero turns into Buffy at the end. There's just no vampires. I ain't lying. I met Rennie Harlan, the director of this movie. I have worked with this man. We had this conversation.
And he's like, Joss Whedon completely owes me royalties because he's.
I don't think it's plagiarism. I don't think he like willfully like stole it. I just think that like it left a real deep impression on him. And you can see it not in the movie. Like, it doesn't really, I don't think you see that influence on the film that they did with Christy Swanson and Luke Perry. Rest in peace, Luke Perry. But rest in peace, Paul Rubens. Man, lost some good ones. But when you look at the television series, you can see, I think, the effect of Elm Street 4 and the Buffy show for sure.
Guess
it even has a song by Dramarama that goes anything, anything that kind of reminds you of the Buffy main theme.
You kind of rocking my world right now.
Anything by Dramarama. The guitar intro of that kind of see they feeling me on that. They know it. See, people who know. When you know, you know. When you know, you know.
That's going to be trending tomorrow. By the way,
I'm putting you on game tonight.
That's going to be trending.
Elm Street 4 Dream Master. You can see the seeds of Buffy in there. I ain't lying. I ain't make it that way. I'm just telling you the way it is.
All right. So let me talk about your other hot book that's on the shelves right now. So
Rutger Hauer. Rest in peace, man. Rutger Hauer is in that movie, man. Maybe that Buffy movie is cursed, yo. You lost some good ones. Good ones gone. Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
My first question to you.
Yes, sir.
Who did you conspire with in the Cult of Boss to make 12,000 copies of this book disappear?
Oh, that was weird.
Was it?
I didn't like I said, I don't really track the jumps. So I was working on a script, still working on that same script actually. And so I forgot when the release date was. So I wasn't really tracking the release of stuff. And then I heard about there's an X-File about the 12,000 missing copies of Ultimate Black Panther. And
how did you find out? How did you find out about it?
People on Twitter were talking about the 12,000 copies, and I was like, "Is this a conspiracy? Is this a thing now? Am I part of a conspiracy theory? That's pretty cool." It was the grassy knoll. No, I'm kidding. I'm not.
It's almost like hardcore Black Panther fans, the Cult of Bast, might have gotten together and said, "You know what? What we could really cause a buzz on this book that we're really looking forward to by making 12,000 issues, just sort of
that was so
disappear
weird
off the back of a truck."
Well, it's weird. It's kind of like, I mean, it's sort of like gaming the value system of comics in a way, right? Because
scarcity.
You create the scarcity, and so then you raise the value. I mean, there's 12,000 of them somewhere,
right? And it became a big mystery, which still remains unsolved.
Kind of a, that's sort of a heist. It's kind of a heist.
Somebody's looking out for you, bro. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. The way I feel about it is I wanted more people to be able to read the book, so I wasn't particularly happy 12,000 copies went missing.
That's where the mystery goes deeper, because the same day it was released, within a few weeks before that, Marvel had announced second printings coming out. So that was weird. The book hasn't come out yet, but you've already announced second printings.
Yeah,
12,000 books disappeared.
I saw that happen too. I am not deeply involved in that side of the business. I mean, to answer Chillmonger's question, to tell writer sales data. Well, we get residuals that tell us a little bit of performance based on what the residuals are. And then I believe you can look up sales data numbers kind of open. I mean, they're not really it's not like streaming numbers where you can't really find them anywhere. Sales data is kind of easier to figure out because a lot of people have access to books. I mean, every store owner has access to sales data, so they can see what's selling and how it's selling. So they don't really hide it. It's not it's not really an X-File. It's a money heist. Yeah, I mean, that's, and so let me just say, if it's not really the trend anymore, but I know what's happening for a bit. If you see any NFT that's related to me in any way, I have nothing to do with it. So just know that. I have never had anything to do with an NFT. I will never have anything to do with the NFT. If you see an NFT and it says this and that, I have nothing to do. It's not me. One me.
He's warned you. He's given your warning. So
don't let him get you.
All right. So here's the thing. I am a huge I didn't get a chance to talk about that. I'm a huge Black Panther fan. That's literally my favorite superhero in the entire world. It's been so for the last 20 years or so.
Yes, sir.
I can say on behalf of myself, and I think I would say a great many other Black Panther longtime readers, were a little taken aback by, certain decisions made by certain writer, or one writer, I should say, maybe a couple, about what we talked about earlier, the deconstruction of T'Challa.
Sure.
And that's nothing to say there's anything wrong with deconstructing a character. There's a
No,
place for
I mean
that.
that
It's
is a
good to,
valid way to approach media, is deconstructing things. And I'm not anti deconstruction. I just personally, I'm not there right now.
right.
Creatively, for me, what satisfies me. I'm not anti deconstruction.
And so what I think is really sort of also helped with the love of your run in this ultimate version of Black Panther, is you're not doing that. You're giving the mainstream fans, the casual fans of the character, people that learned about the character when they saw, Captain America: Civil War and the MCU, a version of the character they're familiar with,
Yes.
And for the longtime readers, it is a going in an opposite direction of the deconstruction we've had for the last 7 or so years. And I think fans are thirsty for it. I think they were very thirsty for it. I know I was, of seeing this version of this character again.
Well, it's funny. I read a review, and it was like, well, Bryan Hill's Black Panther, Bryan Hill's Ultimate Black Panther 1 is interesting, but, for a book in the Ultimate series, I wish that the book would take a bit more of a radicalized approach to the character, right? I don't know if the writer was British. I'm just saying that. And I hear what they're saying, but I'm like, bro, if you want to radicalize for approach to the character, look at the 616 version.
I haven't heard of this thing where Mark Robinson's talking about, where he's saying it's not different enough. I mean, I think
that's exactly what I'm sort of saying. And I'm like, I think they've deconstructed the character fairly, extensively in interesting ways in the 616.
Yeah.
So to me, kind of approaching it from a different way, and I'm doing different things. That, it's like, I don't look. I love people that review comics, but listen, I don't need to make y'all happy with everything in the first issue.
Right.
You gotta read the story.
What? It's funny you should submit that last.
Read the story, y'all. You'll get there.
It's funny you should make that statement. He's like, I don't have to make you all happy in the first issue, and yet you did, because here's our. I remember sitting in a theater watching Captain America: Civil War, and seeing the first time I see Chadwick Boseman on screen, and you see him from behind at the UN thing, and he looks over his shoulder, and you see him, and you're like, oh my God, I've had decades of this character in my head, and I visualize this moment where I see my favorite superhero on the screen.
Right.
And you see him, the way he carried himself, the way he sounded, the way he portrayed the character. And it's like everything that you dreamed about as a fan, right?
Sure.
It was just like a moment, that particular scene. And this is what you gave us in the comic book. You kind of emulated kind of the same thing to a degree with this particular scene. Remember, I was talking about the cinematic aspect of it, this viewpoint from the ground up. Because think about it. And my boy Mark and I do a show on Fridays, and he made this comment. You had in one of the runs that I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to smirch anybody on the show. One of the runs, T'Challa was deconstructed to the point where his Wakanda just was not feeling him anymore. Right? They're disrespecting him. He's no longer the king. What have you?
Sure.
This in one shot. This is the strength of storytelling. In one shot, you see that this is not that. Because in one shot, you see him standing strong, upright, proud, arms back, at his side, looking strong. You've got his subjects bowed all the way to the ground, and the angle of it is people looking from the ground. It's almost like you're one of the subjects who is bending down and looking up from that angle.
Yeah.
Well, and I just thought this was a really powerful panel.
Well, thank
you. Because
Well,
it's complete opposite of what we got in that previous run.
Yeah, and and I'm not anti anyone's work, and I'm not, I'm never working in direct comparison to what someone else has done. But I'm doing a lot of heavy lifting in the first 5 or 6 issues of my Ultimate Black Panther run to build out story possibilities in the world. There's a lot of world building going on.
That's what you do.
And I haven't we haven't really like even dug into the main Catalyst arc plot like thing, you know. So it's almost like the first 5 or 6 issues is like the first act of what I really have, you know, kind of planned for the thing. Because see, the interesting thing to me about Black Panther and Wakanda is that's like its own universe. Like you could do a comic book universe just based on Black Panther and Wakanda.
Yes, you could.
Because it's got, you know, it's got stories that, you know, in history, you've got things that can go laterally. I want to explore spiritualism and this other stuff, that other stuff.
It's
So
got dinosaurs.
Yeah, it's a bit of a slower burn than a lot of my sorry, it's funny, than a lot of my other work, because I wanted it to be a bit of a slower burn. You know,
Yeah.
I wanted to establish this world and its narrative possibilities, its story possibilities, you know, get into the Moon Knight of it all, and then let people see like kind of like the Skyrim, and then get into, you know, kind of the vagaries of arc plots and betrayals and everything else. So yeah, it's, you know, it's virtually impossible to look at, I think. I mean, I guess some people were looking for like the different thing and they wanted to scream out to him like, you know, ooh, T'Challa is a Doberman Pinscher. Well, no, you know, or like, oh, he shoots butterflies at people. Like, no, you know, like, you know, like I didn't want it to be a gimmick. I didn't want the changes to be like, you know, oh, look how weird it is. Oh, you didn't expect that, did you?
But that's the thing, though, bro.
Like, I'm not gonna come at you like that.
He has been portrayed so differently in his deconstruction over almost a decade, 8 years or so now.
Yeah.
That you portraying him in a quote unquote classical traditional sense is different. I mean, think about it. There's a whole generation of people that may have just started reading him back around the MCU time that in the comics, they're not used to seeing what we quote unquote know as a traditional T'Challa. And if anything, going back to something that's like that is brand new at this point.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me, you know, like, you know, I have to write things that I find interesting to spend my time with, because that's the best chance that you know, readers have to get something worth messing around with, you know?
Yeah.
So like I just wanted to do an epic story that like had elements of like Dickens and, you know, all the way from Dickens to Frank Herbert, you know. And
that's what leads to this panel.
Those influences.
You use that word, that
sure.
name, Frank Herbert. Now, there's a rumor that you are a big Frank Herbert Dune fan.
Aspects. I'm a big fan of aspects of Frank Herbert's work. I'm not really a Herbert acolyte.
Yeah. Well, I gotta tell you, bro, this the Vodacon, I'm getting a lot of Bene Gesserit vibes off of them. Is that intentional?
Not to the point where, I mean, intentional in the sense that if it reminds you of a possibly untrustworthy spiritual sect within a monarchical structure, yes.
Yeah.
But many monarchies have had that, right? So like, you know, you can find that in Rome. You can find that in the British monarchy. You can find that in Egypt. You know, the clerics have always had issues with the throne.
Are the Vodacon all women? Because we don't know that yet.
I don't think they're all women as an edict. They're not expressly a matriarchal organization, as it were. I do think that it is rare for a man to be within their ranks.
Yeah.
And that's mainly, you know, from my experience in my family. The women in my family all, you know, would tell me stories about kind of preternatural perception. Dreams that would come true, knowing people were calling before they were calling, you know, phenomena around people dying, like that kind of thing. And it was something that was happening within the female bloodline in my family. Not exclusively said to be so, but like I believe it is rare for a man to be a member of their ranks, but I don't think it's as hard and fast as the Bene Gesserit.
We're gonna circle back to that.
Yeah,
we're gonna circle back to that with the question I have. But let me move on to the next one. So then you introduce his family.
I do.
Shout out your artist, Stefano Caselli.
Well, Caselli's really good, right?
Oh my God, that guy's a beast. This looks so crisp. Your whole art team. Shout out to your whole art team. The ink work, the coloring, this pops off the page. And I wanted to say, I love the cool thing about the Ultimate Use. I was an Ultimate Comics fan. Like I collected a lot of those Ultimate Comics, and I love seeing the alternate version, modernized version, the 21st century version of the Marvel Universe through the Ultimate Comics lens, which is
21st century schizoid man.
And the Ultimate Universe is what kind of formulated the basis of the MCU. So seeing a better Black Panther version than what was in that original Ultimate Universe is tremendous. I love the fact that you did this swerve where Okoye is T'Challa's wife. I didn't really think about it until I saw it on your page, and I was like, that kind of works. It's kind of cool. But more importantly for me, Shuri it can be sometimes a somewhat divisive character within the Black Panther fan community.
Sure.
Which version of Shuri? Because there's pre-MCU version Shuri and post-MCU version of Shuri. And I don't know if you did this intentionally, said, bump that. Why can't I want my cake and eat it too? I want both versions of Shuri in one Shuri. So you have someone who's particularly brilliant and is in charge of making these weapons that the Dora Milaje like, what have you, but is also the hot-headed little sister warrior that we got pre-MCU who became the Black Panther at one point because she's a warrior at heart. And it's always the first one.
I mean, in some ways, you're talking about a kingdom. Like, it's interesting, right? Because you have an isolationist kingdom that has weapons and technology and armies and a militaristic tribe aspect to their culture.
Yeah.
But they're also an isolationist kingdom. And I wanted to explore the different viewpoints on that. Because you have a kingdom that is kind of the most ready for war.
Right.
But isolationists, ostensibly, they wouldn't fight them often. And it seems like a little bit of like a common geopolitical problem. When do we intervene? And I understand that, the movies had a little bit of the interventionist aspects of it, but I didn't think that the movies really got into the ideas of the concepts around intervention from within the realm of Wakanda. It was more of how the world reacted to their existence and less about the inner desire to intervene or not and the risks involved in doing so and all of that. And I mean, I guess maybe that's just a character quality I have from growing up in the West.
Yeah.
Because we live in one of the most dangerous countries in the world. If you were just going to, categorize us in terms of the harm we could cause to the world, the advanced technology we possess, the economic power we have, the political savvy we have. And oftentimes in American politics, the discussion is about whether or not we're going to intervene.
Yeah.
Who we're going to support. Are we going to help Ukraine or not?
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, and Wakanda, I think, had some of those things. And so Shuri is sort of like, it's only so long someone can work on a Ferrari before they want to put it on a racetrack.
Yeah. So let me zip through this because I don't want to take up all your time, and I know you're probably gonna go soon. Benny, this new character you created. I love the fact that you're not afraid to create new characters. I love that about your writing.
Sure.
Just as an aside, I think she is the mole. I think she's the big. I don't want you to say yes or no. I'm just putting it out there. I want this recorded. I think she's the mole. I think she's the traitor to Wakanda because you had that meeting where he's like, "Oh, I only think the people in this room are the only people I trust." That means someone who's the mole is outside of this room. She was not in the room, I don't believe. And
I will not confirm nor deny. But all I'll offer is this: to me the most terrifying idea about a mole isn't necessarily the conversion of someone who's seemingly important, but the conversion of someone who you may have ignored.
Yeah.
Right. And what does that mean? Right. But these are all like the problems of kingdoms. This is the problems of leadership. This is, as the story goes on, I get into Moon Knight and Ra and the kingdom that they want to build, and the methodology they have to build it, and the secrets of Wakanda that we haven't explored yet. Aspects of vibranium we haven't explored yet.
I like how you said "yet." I'm excited just by you saying that.
What is the hidden history, the dangerous things of history? You have a culture that. What's interesting about Wakanda for me is because it's existed for so long, and so much of it is built on its own precepts, that discovery of things that challenge their mythology could create interesting conflict.
Right.
Could create, some things, and I think there's a lot of allegorical things I can do in the stories about how kingdoms function, how they operate, how aware a populace needs to be, and how ignorant you have to keep them. What happens when someone wants to build a rival kingdom to yours?
Oh, that seems like a foreshadowy statement.
Things like that. So those are the things I'm kind of working with.
All right. So you also introduced in this first issue our Wind Rider and Killmonger, who, by the way, as an aside, it's the second time I've seen you portray Killmonger with an axe. Is this the thing with you? Do you like Killmonger with an axe? Does that seem like the weapon that you visualize him with?
And not really a thematic. I mean, it's less inherently elegant than a sword.
Yeah.
And
it's brutal.
It's and it's also, a sword is essentially a weapon made for, it's a weapon, I should say. You make a sword to fight, basically. But an axe is also a tool.
Yeah.
To me, an axe also has a sense of self-reliance, right? And it says a little bit of something. And Killmonger seems to be a character to me that is very self-reliant, that would not have a weapon that would only do one thing.
Yeah.
He'd need something that he could use to fight people, but he'd also need something that he could use to make a clearing.
Yeah. He could build. He could chop down logs and make a house.
Yeah. And so you can tell a lot about a person's mindset by the nature of their tools.
Yeah.
Right. So it seemed like he would have something that had a practicality to it. Because in a lot of ways, an axe is almost a tool that was turned into a weapon and refined into a weapon, but began as something that wasn't necessarily created to rend flesh, but people quickly found it was an efficient way to do so.
And so we move on, because we talked about Wind Rider. You see her, but you don't really see her, which I thought was also a great move. I don't know if it was a stylish choice by you or Stefano. You see Storm, but you don't really see her, right? You kind of see of her, but not her. So I thought that was kind of cool. But when we do, in the next issue, you drop the big one on us. You dropped a big one on us, assuming that this isn't a false flag, and that this is indeed, Storm is going to indeed be the glowing lady, right?
The glowing lady.
And then you dropped on the heir to T'Challa. Now look, I'm a big proponent of the Hudlin run where Storm and Black Panther got married, and he did his world building about them being the future of the Marvel universe, the most powerful couple in the Marvel universe. So much so that the Watcher comes down and says, "Yep, this is a big deal."
Sure.
I was excited about that, and when they got broken up, I was really broken up about it. I'm not going to get into it because that's another half an hour conversation. But circling back to Frank Herbert's Dune, I love how we have what could potentially be the Kwisatz Haderach in this child, right? You said, there hasn't been, there's maybe not definitively a part of the Vodacon.
Well, I wanted to engage not only prophecy in terms of a plotting context,
yeah,
but I wanted to engage how prophecy can be used as a weapon.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think readers should understand is just because the voodoo cons say it does not necessarily mean it's true or that they believe it.
Yeah. Your boy Chillmonger says this is a false flag. Storm is blue. That's Monica Rambeau.
Like, people can use prophecy to control and manipulate you.
Yeah.
With seemingly preternatural insight. I mean, clerics have done that often in history. Have used the idea of soothsaying, the idea of prophecy, the idea of being able to discern the future through their unique means of understanding, and have manipulated entire leaders into action because of those things. I'm not saying that's what the voodoo con is doing here, but I'm saying that, like, one should not take what is said from a cleric at face value. And what all sects want, sect SECT, what all sects want more than anything else is to survive into the next generation.
Yeah.
And the way you survive is by making yourself essential, making yourself necessary.
This sounds like a better argument for this little child here being, as I said, the Kwisatz Haderach of the Vodacon, the prophesized child. Look, we can go a whole rabbit hole in that direction. I'm here for it. Whatever you choose to do.
So it's always like, so the readers have to always, like, you're almost like T'Challa in this story in a lot of sense, because you can't necessarily take what you experience at face value. Right. I think, I've never been a king, but I would imagine one of the hardest parts about being the king is that no one ever tells you the truth.
Yeah.
Right. Is that that there's a motive behind there, and the voodoo con has to establish a relationship to him, a necessity to him. It has to get a place within him,
and play on his desires and hopes, and
knowing that he's cynical, right? Knowing that he is dubious of them. Look at history and look at how the clerics have responded to civilization, to secularity, to technological advancement.
Yeah.
And you can look at the Inquisition as a response to technological development in a way, right? Look at what's going on now. Like, even right now, as we're heading into yet another technological frontier with artificial intelligence and the way that it will affect our lives, you're also seeing a rise of the satanic panic again.
Right.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Because the clerics need to be necessary again.
Well, that's like a running theme in your stories. And I just want to touch about this one last point before I let you go, because I know we had some questions people might want to ask.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for my DoorDash to get here so I can answer some questions.
You have a running theme of questions of faith.
Yes.
In several of the books that I've seen you. I mean, you have this scene here with T'Challa. He's exploring his faith with the Vodacon. Here's a panel from Black Panther Unconquered, in which T'Challa is also struggling with, I'm a man of science. I don't necessarily believe in all this faith stuff.
Right.
I'm not certain where Bast lies in our current modern world. Right. That's something he struggles with there. And then in Killmonger, who is Wakandan originally, and he's had all these terrible things happen to him. And he's like, Bast, why have you forsaken me? In essence, that being forsaken by his God, that break in his faith, that break in trust is what makes him who he ultimately becomes and leads him susceptible to this character that you created. Mm-hmm. Really cool, by the way, that you did some world building, which I always appreciate when writers do, by creating this character I can never say her name right. Kaluna?
Yes.
Is that how you pronounce it? Kaluna.
Well, it's so okay. There's a couple things and all that, right? So, like, one of the things that I think about often is when it comes to matters of faith, and I'm not attacking anyone's faith. I'm just kind of discussing things in more of a philosophical standpoint.
Yeah.
God is either all powerful or God is not all powerful. So if there is injustice, it is well within God's ability to make it go away. If there is betrayal, it's well within God's ability to make it go away if God is all powerful.
Yeah.
And yes, we can say free will and we can say all of this, and that's the reason why God doesn't directly intervene in everything, because we need to have free will. But my question is always like, but why do we need to exist at all? Because God was lonely? And if God is lonely, then God is not all powerful. And if God is not all powerful, then why should we worship God? Right? Now, I don't have the answers to that because ultimately I'm a man. And men and women do not have the mind of divinity. So ultimately, our spiritual, it always comes down to faith. If it was rational, it would not require faith, right? And I think one of the things that I think about often is sometimes we have conflated faith with a kind of rationality, a kind of science, where we have scholarly study of religious texts and all of that. And I think that's interesting, but I think we have to also remember that ultimately it cannot be explained by reason. It cannot be explained by science, because if it was, it wouldn't be faith.
Right.
Right? So ultimately it's irrational. Doesn't mean it's bad, it just means it's irrational. Right? So now what about a leader? What about someone who is responsible for the lives of people, for their livelihood, for their safety, for their futures? Right? How does a leader reconcile with their gods? Because if a leader doesn't intervene, they are judged as unethical. But a God that is silent to your suffering, you're still supposed to worship.
What's in that song with Jay-Z and Kanye? What's a man to a mob? What's a mob to a king? What's a king to a non-believer?
King to a non-believer.
Yeah.
You don't believe in anything. My dog's going crazy behind me. Oh, the new worlds of the night. What the beautiful music they make. But yeah, so I just think about this stuff in a philosophical way, right? Like, I'm not, again, like, if you believe in things, believe in what you want. I'm a spiritual person myself, like we always please. But I think it's interesting to engage these things and to kind of deal with the impossible stuff. I mean, ultimately, it comes down to impossible stuff, right? It comes down to believing in something you cannot prove. And it comes down to, even though you may not have a daily sense of the love of the deity you worship, you still feel the love. Although that love oftentimes allows evil to happen. And if that God cannot stop the evil, that God is not infallible. Yeah. If the God is infallible, then it is allowing the evil to happen, and you have to trust there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
Right? So T'Challa, in that story you mentioned, he's sort of avoiding wrestling with the questions. He's not saying none of this stuff exists. He's just saying that, like, I don't think about it often.
I got other stuff.
I have a super genius mind. I'm a scientist. I don't really engage in often. Killmonger is a suffering person who's asking, why did you let me suffer?
Right.
What was so bad about me? Why did you hate me? And he's found by something else that feels forsaken. You know, I was the kid in Sunday school that was like, if Lucifer would have won, what world did he want? Because he didn't want hell. Hell was the punishment for rebellion.
Right.
Because we call it revolution when it works. Right? So hell was the punishment for rebellion, but he wasn't trying to make hell.
That sounds like the makings of a new Spawn book.
Right? So what was Lucifer's vision? If Lucifer's like, you know what? I would do a better job at this. What was the better job? Right? And that's how you get kicked out of Sunday school. So don't do it at home, kids.
Yeah.
But
I think the answer to that is Vegas.
Right. But like, so Killmonger is like, yo, like I've been through all this stuff. Like, fine, if Bast won't listen to me, if Bast won't hear me, if Bast won't accept me, then I'm going to worship that which will. And maybe I've made this up. Maybe this deity doesn't exist. Maybe this is something that like I've created in my subconscious mind. But, so on and so forth. So like
some of our people have some questions specifically about that character, but I wanted to just rush through this. Here's the announcement. I don't know if you got a chance to see. Is Torrin Clark announced his variant for your issue 5.
Right on.
That's incredible.
Cool. I have 5 minutes, so I can lightning round some questions here.
So let's jump to the questions. Last thing, if you could do a DC book, if you had the option again, please let it be Black Lightning, because your Detective Comics and Batman and the Outsiders run were phenomenal.
Oh, I'd go back to that for sure. I would.
I would strongly encourage you to try that. So here's some questions.
Yes.
First of all, from FJS111, who's the one who did the original tweet that sort of set all this off. What do you think makes T'Challa and Blade great characters and superheroes?
Well, I think their heroism is an effect of the choices they make, not necessarily the most essential part of the character. Like T'Challa is ultimately the king of a place. He's a leader, right? He doesn't exist to be a superhero. He exists to protect his kingdom, basically. And Blade is half vampire, half man. He chooses to reconcile with that by striking out at the things in the darkness, but it's not necessarily the only thing that he is. It's not like he's not like Kal-El, where basically your entire identity is wrapped up in your action. Blade and T'Challa have an identity, and then from that identity they choose to act. It's a little different.
Well, next question. If this series gets approved, can the creator of the original tweet asking for the team up get their likeness on one of the covers or series as Black Panther or Blade? I had to ask.
That depends on if you look like Black Panther or Blade.
That's the perfect answer. Will T'Challa use the powers of Bast like he did against Mephisto, and will Blade use his new abilities that he's received in the current run? I think he's assuming that if there was a
book, Blade would definitely use his powers. T'Challa, possibly, maybe. It would depend on what the story was.
I have a question on that. If you ever have the two of them ever cross, T'Challa still is technically King of the Dead. By Bast. How does the King of the Dead have power? I mean, how does that interact with him interacting with the undead?
Well, would imagine the undead are probably beyond his purview in a way, right? I mean, the undead are kind of a perversion, right?
Like zombies, though.
The undead are kind of a perversion of the natural order, so I think they would likely be beyond that blessing.
I'm curious. I'd like to see you explore that. Cedric Henry says, "Where is Bast in all of this? Because Bast has not shown up in the 2 issues. It's only been 2 issues, Cedric.
Only been 2 issues.
Let the brother cook."
Charlie
Matthews, will Blade get another series after Blood Hunt? I don't think he can disclose that.
Possibly, maybe.
Possibly, maybe is a strong answer. Make Storm and T'Challa great again. If he puts them together, keep the relationship healthy. Oh, from your typing keyboard to Bryan Hill's ears and to God's blessings, please, Bryan Hill, please.
Well, I can't. I'm not going to say whether or not I'm going to put them in a relationship. I can say that if I were going to do it, I know it means a lot to people, and I would take my time with it and explore it in a robust way. It would not be something that I would rush into, right? So, like, because I never feel imprisoned by readers or fans' relationship to characters, but I am cognizant of things that matter to people.
That's a big one.
because it happens to me experientially.
Yeah.
I was really disappointed that in the sequel trilogy of Star Wars, I never got a scene with Luke Skywalker and Anakin.
Mm.
Because I'm like, how? Like, if he's Luke Skywalker and he's gone through all of those things and has all of this power, Anakin would be one of the first people he would try to reach.
Right.
Because he never had a relationship with him.
Where's the Force Ghost?
And he has an opportunity to have a relationship with the father that he never had a relationship with, who could answer the questions of the things that he was feeling in his heart, the things that were going on inside of Ben Solo.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how in the storytelling is he not reaching out to his father to wonder why this corruption is happening? And I just thought it was like an incredible missed opportunity there. And look, no one has to do that. Like, Ryan doesn't have to do that. He could not be interested in that. That's totally fine. But when I know that relationships and pairings mean a lot of things to people, if I do enter into that territory, I need to enter into it and really treat it with respect and take my time with it and not try to rush into things. Again,
I think Coates did a good job of that, putting them back together very organically and addressing.
Yeah, I just think I'm not just going to try to just get to the base and then round the base and get to the next base. Like, I'm not going to do that. So I'm not guaranteeing I'm doing it, but if I do it, I'm going to really make it be a lot of it. I have time for one more question.
All right. Here's one from one of the members of our community. What was your inspiration for Kaluna? He loves this. He loves the character. He loves your Killmonger run, and he owns all of these original art pages you see on the screen here.
Well, again, the inspiration was I always saw Eric as kind of a Luciferian figure, like a prodigal son, and Bass seemed very much like a deity of traditional legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to find an opposite, create an opposite. And I could have used someone from an existing West African pantheon. I could have. To be honest, I'm a little wary of using actual destructive entities in fiction because I don't know what happens when you get a bunch of people thinking about something at the same time. Like, if hundreds of thousands of people are thinking about Bast, I'm not kept up at night. But if
you're a very fourth dimensional thinker and belief in the power of thought.
I'm a little Jungian, right? Like, I'm a little Jungian. So, like, I don't know if it's responsible to have a bunch of people thinking about an actual entity that might be known as a harbinger of destruction. I'm not sure that's good, right?
The power of thought.
Power of thought. So I was like, I'll create a thing that doesn't have those actual historical connotations, because I just think that's safer. I'm just being real. I'm just like, I don't know how positive that is. Like, I don't really know. Playing with forces we may not understand is all I'll say.
All right. Well, Bryan, it has been a true and honor and pleasure to have you on the show. We hope you can have me back.
Thank you for showing up.
We have a tradition here at Black Comic Lords. Whenever we interview one of you creators, we consider you to be a member of our family, and we get you initiated by having you look in the camera, say your name, and say, "I'm a Black Comic Lord."
I'm Bryan Hill, and I'm a Black Comic Lord.
I think that's probably the best one I've ever heard.
It's been great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry I have to go, but I'm starving, so I got to eat something. But
we'll get your DoorDash, man.
I'll be back here anytime you'd have me, and I appreciate each and every one of you who watched and listened to this, and people who've read my stuff and picked it up and supported me online, and the rest of it. I really appreciate all of you sincerely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And everyone, be safe and be good, and you can find me out there. Cheers.
If any of you like this video, please like the video. And if you please share it and go pre-order Bryan Edward Hill's comics. Thank you very much. And with that, Derek, I think we're done. Dr. Wizard, Black Comic Lords, we got you.